154 champion of the world Canelo Alvarez has again handed another undefeated fighter his first defeat after his just concluded fight upward. And like the last time, the world champion with 3 belts won through a unanimous decision victory defeating the undefeated Edgar Berlanga. Getting better, he has shown the ability to learn, the ability to grow, the ability. Canelo Alvarez himself has been defeated, but his record of 62 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses in 66 fights is enough to describe the kind of fighter he is. One who's surely a future Hall of Famer. As always, he's like a father figure. Edgar Berlanga had not only boasted of his ability to destroy Canelo Alvarez during the press conference, but even on fight night, while he headed to the ring, fans could hear him say, "Damn Canelo, damn Mexico." However, it was a different ballgame when he got into the ring. Edgar Berl has power, no doubts. His power gave him the record of 16 straight first-round knockouts in his first 16 fights, but Canelo Alvarez showed himself skillful and technical enough to neutralize Edgar Berlanga's power all through the night. Berlanga found it so difficult to match Canelo's boxing intelligence, as he had banked so much on his power. To Rico, here is Edgar Berlanga, but Canelo's experience with hard hitters was enough to help him work down Edgar Berlanga with body shots while maintaining his defense. Not a single moment of the match lacked action, as the match began with so much intensity and brutality that would characterize a national rivalry. And despite the fact that Edgar Berlanga had shown his zero respect for Canelo Alvarez all through the build-up, he had promised to throw out all the respect and records for Canelo once they stepped into the ring. Well, he indeed did that, winning a few of the early rounds. However, it came as a surprise to both Mongia and his supporters when Canelo Alvarez dropped his back on the canvas in the 6th round. And now, following this, many fans had taken to social media to announce a possible knockout in a few more rounds. Sadly, it never happened, ladies and gentlemen. His opponent, trained by Ed. In fact, both fighters had promised each other knockouts during their build-up. However, they both failed their promises and didn't get the knockout. However, Canelo Alvarez saw himself extend his wins from 61 to 62 in 66 bouts. He's a fighting pride of unarguably. Canelo Alvarez has once again cemented his name in history books as one of the greatest ever to step his feet on the boxing canvas. He's gifted the world not only action-packed boxing matches, but a super impressive career that'll live in the memories of many. Mia really saw Canelo Alvarez successfully retained his 3 super middleweight titles with a convincing victory over Edgar Berlanga, who recovered from one of the most devastating knockdowns of his career to survive all 12 rounds. Today, we're bringing you an in-depth look at Las Vegas's T-Mobile Arena on the occasion of Mexican Independence Day. The world's highest-profile fighter earned scores of 117, 110, 15, 15, 112, and 115, 112, and therefore a unanimous decision to show what a fine fighter he remains. One of the most anticipated boxing matches of the year. The Edgar Berlanga reached the final bell, made him the 5th successive opponent to do so, and extended the run that has contributed to suggestions that at 33 Alvarez is in decline. But Edgar Berlanga proved he isn't worth all the hype that's been around him for his knockout streak. Canelo Alvarez versus, and however, in some way, he enhanced his reputation on the occasion of his biggest fight to ensure that further rewarding nights will come his way. In his previous fight, Mongia had stopped Patrick MCC in February 2024. Berlanga, the boxing world will turn its eyes. The 26-year-old's performance that night in February, and the result contributed to his selection as Alvarez's latest opponent. It was the first time in 5 fights and more than 3 years Edgar Berlanga scored a knockout, really needing no introduction the world over. He is a future Hall of Famer, and his 6th-round stoppage of Padre McCroy was sufficient to put him ahead of the Benavides or Jal Charlo in the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes. It has been a curious career to this point for Berlanga. He began with 16 straight stoppages and followed it with 5 consecutive distance wins, and knew that going to the scorecards against McGraw would mark the end of whatever hope he might have of facing Alvarez. 2 losses, 2 draws, 39 of his wins had come by way of knockout, and yet he came out for the first round, showing so much patience that he barely threw a punch. There was scarcely any more action in the second either, which Berlanga insisted was intentional. He's the 4-division world champion, boxing first and only, however, against Canelo, the typically reckless. Berlanga was more polished and cautious from the opening bell. Great guy champion. He going to continue doing good, so it was Alvarez and not Berlanga who first looked naive when he swung and missed with a wild left hook, even if it swiftly became clear that Alvarez recognized that the biggest risk of defeat existed in the possibility of him being outworked, and I very broke to that end. He quickly targeted Edgar Berlanga's body after landing a left hook. He threw a right to the body, and while Mongia briefly let his hands go in response, he remained patient, jabbed with greater intelligence, and admirably cut off the ring. This kind of fights here in Vas all a right and left to Berlanga's body followed in the second round, and after further jabs Alvarez punished Berlanga with a hurtful straight right hand as Berlanga started to outwork him and landed also to the body an eye-catching left hand. All around is watching us further success to both head and body in the third was punctuated by Alvarez landing a right uppercut and then a left to the body, and the rivals trading for a brief exchange, when Alvarez then missed with a right. Berlanga landed a right to the body, and then to the head, and encouraged he intensified his attack to snap back the champion's head and bring the near-capacity Mexican crowd to their feet. It was in the third when Alvarez, having repeatedly tested Berlanga's admirable punch resistance, recorded the only knockdown of the fight and the only knockdown Edgar Berlanga has suffered in his career. They had traded further right hands when Alvarez clinically timed an accurate right uppercut and dropped Berlanga, whose gradual recovery was equally impressive. Edgar Berlanga's body therefore became less of a target for Alvarez, who in targeting his challenger head appeared determined to record his first knockout since that over Caleb Plant in applause. 2021 Berlanga looked tired as a consequence of the punish. He had taken his technique, lost some of its earlier edge, and he started to get backed up when his head was snapped back by a left hand in the sixth. The risk of the stoppage appeared significant. Instead, after successive right hands from Alvarez, Berlanga responded, albeit with reduced authority, by throwing back to both body and head. Fig third or round, Alvarez, potentially in an attempt to unnerve his less experienced opponent, repeatedly stood between rounds in the build-up to their fight. It had been suggested that Berlanga's unconvincing defense would undermine him, and so throughout the seventh round it proved fight. Alvarez's advantage in experience was perhaps never more apparent than when, while he was in the corner, he allowed Berlanga to let his hands go, waited for his moment, and then landed a left hook. There were again periods when Berlanga threatened to outwork Alvarez, but when his work rate was negated by the superior quality and accuracy of the champion's punches. Stage of Mexican Independence Day weekend, the distance and to a lesser degree the fight's tempo were increasingly being dictated by Alvarez, as was demonstrated in the ninth round. That was Berlanga's most effective since the knockdown, but that still ended with him swallowing a right hand and then a left hook. Berlanga was hurt again by a right uppercut when they were trading inside in the 11th, and again in the 12th when another right uppercut punished his aggression. Canelo Alvarez, an icon, a legend, and one of the most formidable fighters, a left-right combination, hurt him once again shortly before the final bell, when it became clear that not only would he survive, but that by remaining on his feet and forcing such an exciting contest, and therefore the loudest of atmospheres, he had proved himself capable of competing with the elite in the history of boxing. We have 61 wins in 65 fights. This win means a lot, Alvarez said. I'm glad that I gave him this opportunity. I knew he couldn't withstand so much and was a great one. I'm very proud that all the Mexicans are here watching us. I was, you know what I'm saying, I was in my city, man. In an interview with ESPN, the World Boxing Association, mandatory challenger of Canelo Alvarez, had assured that he is ready to surprise and even anticipated that he will knock out the Mexican in only 6 rounds, something that seemed unlikely against an opponent who has never touched the canvas in his entire professional career, you know. But I didn't like the fact how he was just acting. He even assured that the last 3 opponents Canelo faced meant nothing, and that is why he defeated them. We are going to make history and become legends. A lot of people say I haven't fought anyone, but that's life. I have to block everything out and focus on my training, putting God first. Everything that happens in my life happens for a reason. We watched the video how everything was, you know, when I'm